AskReddit by okboot 5426. What's a job that's romanticized but in reality sucks? I strongly suspect being a spy doesn't involve half as many high-tech gadgets and spontaneous sexual intercourse as I've been led to believe. Edit. Thanks for all the awards, and wow, the way my inbox just blew up, you'd think I started an OnlyFans. One former member of the CIA said the most unbelievable thing about James Bond was that he never had to file an expense report. Anything in modern day publishing. How many television shows and movies must I watch where the plucky young upstart graduates from college and gets a job at the magazine or newspaper of their choice and is respected and can make a living? The pay sucks. You're in constant danger of being laid off when your pub folds, usually, and it's usually a pretty corporate environment where you're tasked with multiple jobs for little hope of advancement. The names high up on the mastheads are usually those of rich people, and it's because they started off rich and could afford to stay in the industry. I got an offer for my dream internship once, at a publishing company right out of college. Unpaid. In New York. Yeah, I can afford to move to a place with 5 times the cost of living than where I am for a full-time job for no money. Sometimes I wonder where I'd be if I jumped at the chance. Then I realize homeless in NY. Well, this thread is insanely depressing. Are there any good fields to go into? Lol. The lesson is that a job is a means to support your lifestyle. If it depresses you, then don't put all of your self-worth into your career identity. Strive for work-life balance, and develop some hobbies. From what I've understood, being a cowboy is really awful. Gunslingers and bandits too. Literature often portrays them as folk heroes who wore flashy, studded suits and gun belts and traipsed around towns like they owned them, striking fear into civilians and lawmen alike. However, the reality of the matter is that these guys were nothing more than common criminals and fugitives who were always on the run, could never settle down and relax, and often had only a rope or bullet to the head to look forward to at the end of their incredibly short lives. Working on a film. If you're a crew, it sucks long hours for what seem like very slow progress on the picture, lots of standing around waiting, etc. You arrive well before everyone else and leave after everyone else. If this is an indie production, you also may have to beg Chase down for your pay at the end of each week. Oh, and when the film wraps, you're now unemployed. I'm a sound FX editor and have to say post-production is much more forgiving. Love my job. I probably wouldn't last long on a set though. Lawyer. Number of historic, life-changing, precedent-setting cases participated in. 0. Number of angry, self-entitled, abusive clients wanting to screw each other over. 842. Number of pages of paperwork that sucked up free time and social life. 84,836. The movies and shows rarely show the soul-draining task of doc review. Just had a pretty shit month at work and was considering putting in my papers, but this thread gave me a lot of perspective. Thank you, OP. Everyone used to think it was awesome that I worked in live sports TV. 70% of the people I worked with were miserable pricks with overinflated egos, and then there were the athletes. I knew several people that worked at my local TV station. They all basically said I got 5 minutes of training, and then I was editing the live news with no other instruction beyond if you screw up, you're fired. Apparently the turnover rate, both voluntary and otherwise, was brutal. Ballerina. Fortunately you won't be doing it for very long. Anything that requires a lot of travel. Sounds glamorous, but in reality all you see usually an airport, conference room, boring hotel room, and maybe a restaurant if you are lucky. It's exhausting and it actually just sucks. I did it in my mid-20s for 2 years. Every week I went to a new factory somewhere in North America. Sometimes I went to 2 or 3 different states in a week. It was awesome. I got to do a lot of cool things. I had a lot of unique experiences. I got a ton of free travel out of it. I would never do it again. It's hard to have hobbies. It's hard to eat well. It's hard to maintain friendships. It's hard to work out consistently. When you're only home in the weekends, you just spend that time getting caught up on housework and getting ready for the next week. You end up hating everyone and everything at any airport. Apparently lifeguard, because nobody can find them anymore. I did lifeguarding for a while when I was a teen. This is now 30 plus years ago. It's a tough job. It seems glamorous, you get paid to tan all day long. Couldn't be further from the truth. It requires training. I needed my lifeguarding certification as well as my first aid and CPR certifications. It is mentally taxing, you need to be on whenever you're guarding. Drowning is often silent, unlike what you see on TV, and you really need to be observant. There are also a lot of parents who can't or won't watch their own children, which is frustrating, to say the least. Too many parents far underestimate how dangerous water can be. It was great for the couple of years I did it, good pay, flexibility, fresh air when I worked outside, but it definitely is not something I wanted to do in the long term. Computer game development, especially testing. That is the ass end of an industry that is mostly ass. I was gonna say video game development, too. People think it's all about creativity and making something cool and fun, when the reality is a lot of bullshit. Treat him like shit, use him like toilet paper. Journalist. Expectation. I'm gonna be the next Hunter S. Thompson and write compelling feature pieces with a unique voice and get paid to travel the world. Reality. Talking to my editor about how my contact from the cat fashion show won't call me back or do an interview unless we pay them $80 or adopt 2 cats. What kinda cats we talking? Architect. You think you'll be designing big fancy iconic buildings, warehouses, Walmarts, strip malls, and shitbox apartments all need architects, and that's probably what you'll end up doing. I always wanted to pretend to be an architect. So all of the jobs then. Oh, you hate your job? There's a support group for that, you know. It's called Everyone. We meet at the bar. Film television industry. Long, thankless hours. The expectation that you should be available 24/7, otherwise there is a long lineup of replacements waiting for the chance. You might get lucky and work your way to the top, maybe enjoy some fame and fortune, but even there, it's a dog-eat-dog world. Most people have to sell a bit of their soul to get and stay there. And if you don't make it, you either toil away on crew or end up regaling your co-workers in some other industry with exciting stories about your time in the biz, that is if anyone hires you, because they just can't understand why you left the exciting world of Hollywood to come work at the grocery store. Probably anything in the entertainment industry. It's bogged down by a lot of workers' rights violations, insane hours during crunch time, no work-life balance, and you don't even get paid much because your employers and society at large think it's a privilege to even be working in the industry. I worked for an anime dubbing studio right out of college for about a year and a half. Everyone was like, wow, that's so cool, except in reality, it wasn't. Minimum wage pay and long hours. Working conventions was probably the worst thing. Ended up leaving there because I was barely able to pay my bills. When I asked for a raise, my manager said I was going to get one when the state raised the minimum wage. I'd say the only good thing about that job was getting free merch once in a while and getting to have an additional voices or small role credit because they would too cheap pay anyone for those roles. Sometimes I go back and think, well, maybe if I would have stayed on for a couple of years I could have gotten a promotion, more money, etc. But then reality hits me as I look to one of my friends who is still with them. He is still labeled as an assistant producer and makes the same shitty wage as when he started. He has been unable to move out of his mom's for the past decade and a half, but at least he's working a cool job, right? Anything in the music industry. You're never really off the clock. The pay is terrible pretty much all across the board unless you're in the 1% of the top in any business. People think it's all glamorous because they see the popstars, the music videos, the award shows. Truth is, it's blood, sweat, tears, stress, lack of sleep, a lot of inappropriate behavior, drugs, fun if you like it, not fun if you don't, alcohol, again, fun if you like it, not fun if you don't, and again, low pay, and then maybe once or twice a year you get a perk of going to an award show with free food, booze and a chance to say hi to some celebs. Can't even take a photo with them, really, as it's not deemed professional in a work setting. I've been there for 15 years give or take, branched out, still linked to it in some ways, but I get my money, much better money, might I say, elsewhere now and without as much stress or worry. Teacher. Fantasy, ima change the world one student at a time. Reality, poor paying zoo. Teacher here, if you think you are going to pull an Aaron Gruel and change the world, you will burn out and drop out. If you like sharing your subject and enjoy the little victories, it's a great gig. I love it. I also know which students to really focus on and have determined that I won't break my back for students and parents that are apathetic. I also recognize that history isn't everyone's thing, so if I can drill down a few important concepts, good enough. Chef cook shit pay. Toxic work environment. Shitty hot working conditions. Megalomaniac incompetent management and owners. Long shitty hours. Working every weekend and every holiday. The only people you will see regularly are your co-workers. And most people descend into alcoholism or drug abuse to cope. Most people get into it because they are passionate about it, and most bosses will take advantage of this. I spent 10 years in this field. I walked away with nothing other than the knowledge I gained, then had to re-enter to workforce at the bottom at the age of 30. Been out 5 years now, and started making more money and working less hours within a year. I wish I'd left sooner. This one I wholeheartedly agree with. Was in the kitchen for years cause I loved food and learning to cook new things all the time. Then the burnout happened real quick. Overworked and underpaid. It started taking my sanity and definitely did a copious amount of drinking and shit. Now, I am a bartender and weirdly enough, I drink way less than I used to. Also, I make more money and work less hours. I just wish bartending had health insurance. I have 2 jobs that fit the bill. Video game tester, the pay is terrible. You sit in a dark room with no windows all day performing monotonous tests with a group of antisocial introverts. I ran out of inventive ways to submit bug reports saying, the player cannot approach closely enough to the rocket coordinates. See attached screenshot. I remember working as a group 4 hours to attempt to manually test an unlockable achievement, only to have the development team push out a new code build right before we finished, so we had to start all over again. Archaeologist, again, the pay is terrible. Most of the projects are tied to expanding the fossil fuel industry, hooray, climate change art. Doing phase 1 work involves checking to see if anything of cultural value is present in a given area. I compare it to playing Battleship. You dig a hole, it's empty, miss. You dig a hole, you find something, hit. Dig around the hit, looking for other hits. You mostly dig many empty holes. I had to rebury my most interesting find, a Native American hearth, because it wasn't in the budget to excavate it. Due to how the laws work, that site was later bulldozed, and now there's a gas station there. That bit about the Native American hearth is mind-blowing to me. That site doesn't get put on hold for later examination, or passed on to another team who has the budget. It just gets forgotten and ignored. Stockbroker financial advisor. I was a broker advisor for over 25 years and it was what I wanted to be from about age 15. I thought it would be cool to know all about the stock market and make a lot of money. What I didn't realize was the fact that, if you're a person with any moral compass, it can be extremely stressful as you have people's financial lives in your hands. and many of my clients were retired, so making mistakes or giving bad advice could seriously affect their lives. When I first got into the business, drug use was rampant. Cocaine was the drug of choice, but there were also a lot of alcoholics. Divorce rates were high. I experienced one myself, and if you have kids it was near impossible to spend quality time with them on a regular basis. The money was great. I made more money than I ever thought I would. However, there was a trade-off. Stress, lack of relationship with kids, wife, and for some, as I mentioned, drug alcohol addiction. After 25 years I had enough. I went out on my own for a few years, then left the business altogether. Things are different in the industry now, and I think it's a lot more realistic to be a broker advisor and have a good work-life balance, but it wasn't when I broke into the business. Actor, actress. Most don't make it big and many have very short career spans, then fade into obscurity. Deleted. Lawyers, everyone thinks that it's like Suits. Reality, reading papers for hours and running behind clients in order to get them to come to the appointment. Source: my dad. Clients? What are those? Current big law associate. Matters, but it only sucks when people romanticize it. Otherwise it's pretty awesome. Can suck if people sweat a lot or have massive amounts of body hair that fall off when you rub them, so you come out with your arms covered in some dude's back hair. You also get farted on a lot, and hit on, and comments like, "Oh, I feel sorry for your boyfriend with all that strength in your fingers." Good thing is you can just laugh and push a really sore trigger point to make yourself feel better. Otherwise it's a pretty awesome job, but definitely not for everyone. Reading the comments. All jobs really sucks. Honestly, there's a whole lot of office jobs out there that are pretty unremarkable, but the pay is okay to excellent. You get to work in an air-conditioned office. Job security is pretty good. It doesn't wreck your body. It's usually not too stressful, and you don't have to be available outside of office hours. Also, you may be able to get away with only doing 1-4 hours of real work every day. It's not the most glamorous life, and it's often not particularly meaningful work, but the work conditions are pretty good. For office folks,